I decided, since the Mayo Clinic was made such an enormous influence on my decisions and trajectory going forward, I'm going to do a separate video on it altogether. Um, but what I can do is just distill things and tell you what the outcomes were and what happened in general. Um, it was a huge privilege to be able to go there. I'm very, very grateful that for getting a second opinion on treatment options, that was available to me. So based on my time there, I never dreamed that the doctors said, okay, so I went there, I ended up being there approximately 5 days, but the end result was the doctor said, no DMTs for you. And I'm like, I felt like it was Christmas. Honestly, I had no idea that that was even on the table, that they would potentially come up with that as an option, is advising me against going on disease modifying therapy. That's what happened. And I was ecstatic. I totally was, because I was very nervous about going on DMTs, as I'm sure any person considering those options initially, it's a scary prospect. So um, I went through what I thought was a reasonable um, consideration of giving that, getting a good second opinion. And there it was. So when I got back, I waited a little bit before canceling Chair 10 on, I think, April 23rd or whenever it was I had that scheduled. And I did end up meeting with my neurologist a week or so after that time frame to discuss my decision. I was a little nervous because I was going against his recommendations, and I didn't know how that would be met. He was lovely, and I really, really appreciate my local neurologist, as he's been nothing but supportive of my decisions about my healthcare going forward. And I guess some people could be dismissed at that point, but he said as long as I wanted to be under his care, I could be. He did say, well, if he feels strongly at some point that I need to go in a direction and I do not agree with that, that he may decide that I need to be under some other person's care. I don't know. But I did meet with him, and we had a good discussion about what the findings were at Mayo, what I decided based on that information, and I told him I wanted to know his thoughts. He shared that with me. And so I decided at that time I was going to deal with MS naturally without disease modifying therapy. Now, what Mayo had shared with me was, should I have issues in the future, which I will, it's not an if, but when, um, the best course for me would be a consideration of steroids. Now, what they were talking about is infusions, like or I should say IV steroids for multiple days in the hospital. A couple times I have reached out to my neurologist inquiring and asking for oral steroids, which he has prescribed. I have taken. Actually, I only did it once, and it did seem to help. But Mayo was of the opinion that should anything arise in the way of what they called a flare, or I had disease activity, or I have what they consider was more likely, given my age and amount of time I've had in the disease process, PIRA, progression independent of relapsing activity, that steroids would be the way to treat that. So I have not needed steroids more than one time orally, and that was earlier after my diagnosis. And yeah, so that is where I am with treatment and in the way of anything that came up symptom wise.